You ever notice how the worst people always seem to get holidays and highways named after them, while the actual monsters get sealed court documents? I mean, right now we're talking about a time when Jeffrey Epstein is all in the news, and that man's been dead for like 2 or 3 years, right? I mean, he is America's Voldemort, for lack of a better term. Well, at least to the rich and to the powerful, because powerful people don't say his name whatsoever. But they all seem to know when the next fight schedule is. You know what I'm saying? So, like, all the stuff that we've been talking about, or that we've been thinking about, or that we thought Diddy was, Jeffrey Epstein is. But of course, since we live in a world where the dark skinned always have to do more to win, and the darker you are, the harder you have to work, and all that good stuff. So, of course, anything Diddy does seems massively huger and more heinous than anything Jeffrey Epstein has done, even though he's the one who was actually in a court case along with our current president, defending himself against the allegations of a 13-year-old at the time who said that they both assaulted her. So you take that how you want. I mean, again, this current administration ran on transparency, on releasing the list. Now they hit us with, why are we still talking about this, guys? Why are we still talking about a guy who still won't die? And that ain't him just dodging the information. I mean, it is, but it's not just him dodging the information, right? It's a death rattle. It's them letting you know that, oh snap, I'm spiraling out of control and I don't really know what else to say. Darn it, what do I do? So that's how he's acting. And all of this kind of brought me to the notion of history, or to the idea of history, and who writes our history, right? Who makes the things that we know knowable, write them down so that they can be, or writes them down so that they can be knowable, right? Who does that? Who are the people that are in charge of making sure that the information that we receive is accurate, and that it's actually telling the truth as it should be told? I mean, what's happened to Epstein? What's happened to a lot of other stories that have been crossing the historic waves of this nation? But as things have been rolling out recently from our current administration, it just has me feeling like, you know what? Maybe they have no idea what they're doing. But either way, this is historic. And it brought me to the premise that if you can kill a man, erase the evidence, bury the truth, and rewrite the narrative, then congratulations, you've made history. This is Society Breakdown. Peace, 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 and blessings. What's good? This is your boy Seven Inglewood Zone right now in your zone, and this is another episode of Society Breakdown, where we take a bit of the broken and try to make a beautiful mosaic from the pieces. You dig? And today's episode is about history and the fact that it's being told by liars, because truth doesn't make textbooks. It gets redacted. And so with that, we'll ask our three big questions, right? Who gets to write history, and what are they hiding? Why do lies endure longer than the people who tell them? And how do we reclaim buried truth before it's erased entirely? Let's go. So first of all, let's just get things straight, right? Winners don't, I mean, it's told, it's been said a time or two, it's been said in tons of different cliches and things that history is written by the winners. And I would say it's not even the winners who write the history. Because think about it. In the I can't, I'm sure I'm going to misstate which Olympics it was, but in the Olympics when Hitler was thinking that his Aryan people were going to be the best, and Jesse Owens came to let them know, hell no. Jesse Owens won, but Jesse Owens didn't write none of that. He was the winner. But what did he write? He didn't write that history. It had to take people of power to write that history, to write that narrative, to let people know what exactly took place, and people of more power than Hitler, because Hitler was, at the time, he was the power, he was the truth at the time. So that show right there, and right then and there, that he couldn't control all the narratives and all the information that was being put out to such a degree that he couldn't do anything but acknowledge the fact that he got his ass handed to him, and well, his people got their ass handed to him. But yeah, that lets us know right then and there that it's not the winners. It's whoever controls the printing press and the budget. Those are the people generally who are the ones that's writing the history, right? I mean, because look at this. Columbus Day still exists, and we still romanticize slave-owning founding fathers. And yet, somebody like Fred Hampton, who was actually feeding kids, who was about the community and was about helping his people, he can't even get a damn park bench in Chicago. He can't get a wall, he can't get a mural without somebody pissing on it or doing something like. And this is real. These are real people. Like, it's up to the people to maintain a knowledgeable history of it and of what he did and of his actions, so that way that can be maintained. Because if we have to hope that the power will do it, well, the power won't necessarily act in the way that we think is appropriate. And if you look at, I think there's a documentary called The Revolutionaries. I think it's called. Is it The Revolutionaries or the? I think it's The Revolutionaries, where they talk about textbooks that are, and how basically the textbook industry is run by the state of Texas, shortly followed by California, because those are the biggest two states, and those are the states that have the most schools and buy the most textbooks. So with that in mind, whatever they say generally goes. And with that, Texas has replaced slavery in certain books and textbooks. Like the word slavery, they replaced it with involuntary relocation, or what is unpaid internship. I've also heard it called. What part of education is that? It's like that's this real softening of what slavery actually is, of the brutality of slavery, in this editorial malpractice that they're doing. And how was that helping the people? I would think this would give people of Texas a weird, I don't know, almost make them boastful in their thoughts. Because if you look at it like that, you'll say, well, let's just say, let's because I like to extrapolate things. If you don't know anything about me, I'm an extrapolator. Pause. Have you take that? Pause. I'm an extrapolator, and I like to take an idea or think of an idea that's being introduced today and say, okay, well, how far does that go into the future? To what end does this go, right? And if I look at that and I say, well, okay, so if people in Texas are saying slaves were involuntarily relocated, and or they were unpaid interns, right? Then that would really give credence to the notion that, oh, black people are just lazy because they're descendants of, black people today are descendants of those slaves. And look at how far they haven't gotten. And all they were was unpaid interns. There are tons of people who have unpaid internships today who become leaders of Fortune 500 companies. You mean to tell me that none of these slave descendants were leaders of Fortune 500 companies? They must just be lazy. Like, hopefully you can see how that can turn into that. That can give you a haughty sense of self, and while at the same time making you feel like, well, the other people around you aren't doing as well. It must be their fault that they're not doing as well, because, well, their start off wasn't that bad. And when the narrative is spun in such a way, people have a tendency to believe that, because people are lazy and will not do the research. That's just humanity. I mean, we see today how courts will seal records to protect the innocent, right? But who are the innocent exactly? I mean, especially with regard to the courts and what we're seeing today, right? We're seeing, in regard to the Jeffrey Epstein case in particular, we've seen statements where people are saying, I think it was Pam Bondi and some of the others within the administration who have said something like, we're not going to release this information because we're doing it to protect the innocent. Who are the innocent exactly? I mean, I'm just saying, because like you've got a whole client list that you talked about that was on your desk, that you were ready to show to the world. You got Cash Patel talking about he was ready to take the list and show it to people. Then he's saying, look at me. If I had it, do I look like somebody?
Do you think that myself, Bongino, and others would participate in hiding information about Epstein's grotesque activities? Or do you think we would also participate in not prosecuting people we had evidence to prosecute people on? Where's the videotape of an Epstein Island of X, Y, and Z committing these frauds? Why haven't you given it to us? Do you really think I wouldn't give that to you?
I hate when people say, do I look like somebody? I don't know what that looks like. Whatever it is, whatever you're saying, do I look like? I don't know, because I don't know what a person who is full of shit looks like. I know that you look like you're full of shit, but I don't know what a full of shit person actually looks like. Are you full of shit? Because you sound like it and you act like it. That's what you look like. But I digress. I'm just saying, Epstein, I don't know if I'm gonna say Epstein. So I'll go back and forth, and I apologize for that. But I don't know which one it is. But the dude's client list vanished quicker than your stimulus check, right? Yet Ghislaine Maxwell is still in prison for trafficking. So if there's no client list, there is no clients, right? Which would mean Ghislaine Maxwell shouldn't be in prison, right? How was she convicted for trafficking? Who did she traffic to? Did she traffic to herself? Did she traffic from herself? And as a matter of fact, do you know how many steps, how many things are necessary? How much of a network is necessary to get trafficking done or completed in some sort of way? Allow me to elucidate. Give me a second. So we all know that they try to get your boy Diddy for not trafficking. What was it? Racketeering. They try to get him for racketeering, which is really hard to do when it's just you. I digress. But I'm saying that to illustrate how if we've only got Ghislaine Maxwell, it's still hard to traffic people when it's just you. So again, if she's the trafficker or she's guilty of trafficking or participating in the trafficking, who did she traffic? Like, where are okay, we don't want to talk about the victims, the actual victims, but still, who did she traffic to? Who did she traffic from? And what network did she have in place? Here's what's necessary, just so you are aware. Here is what's necessary for you, and I'm not saying anybody should go out and do any trafficking or anything like that. This is only for educational purposes. So I'm just laying it out there for what's necessary to do trafficking if one were to, right? You would have to have somebody doing recruitment. You would have to have someone to harbor the people, someone to doing the transportation. You'd have to have some sort of provision in terms of either pay or food or something like that to keep them while they're being transported. You would have to have a means to obtain them. How are you going to get them in the first place? And then you have to patronize or solicit in some sort of way to get them to come to you. That's just the first part. That's the action part, right? Then under the means part, it talks about how they achieve the exploitation and the trafficking, right? They do so by force, by fraud, or by coercion, right? Who was Ghislaine Maxwell forcing, using fraudulence against, or coercing? Who did she do that with? I mean, I guess the girls just trafficked themselves. Magic and trust. That is not incompetence. It might be weaponized incompetence, but in all actuality, I think it's policy. And to me, policy is just, in a lot of cases, it's just organized lying with the logo. Now, we've learned that when you repeat something enough, it becomes real. It doesn't have to be true. It's just has to be taught. I'll give you a couple examples, right? The Vietnam War. It was sold to us as a democracy promotion. And that was basically just resource hoarding and imperialism. Check out the book Confessions of an Economic Hitman by John Perkins if you're looking for some insight on that. Then we got Iraq, right? Weapons of mass destruction, right? Isn't that why we just bombed Iran? For weapons of mass, so they don't have weapons of mass destruction? and we bombed Iraq, and they didn't even have any. Who knows what's actually going on in Iraq? And as a matter of fact, your boy Trump was talking about how when we did do the bombing of Iran recently, that now that has completely wiped out their facilities and they will not be able to make anything whatsoever. Only to find out that was completely wrong, utterly wrong. And maybe you stopped production by like 6 months, maybe. Or maybe you did absolutely nothing and all you did was start a bonfire. Notice I say a bonfire. Anyway, copyrighted. But then we got the Tulsa massacre that's been omitted for almost a century. I mean, we've got, what was it, just as soon as what, last year, or sorry, as recent as last year or the year before, where we had some descendants who were before, was it before Congress or before the state legislature in Oklahoma? I'm sorry, I can't, it escapes me right now. But I know that they were just looking for acknowledgement that this thing happened and some sort of restitution or reparations for what happened directly to them. And one of the ladies was like 102 years old, and she can't get reparations, but she can get some new Jordans. They gave her new Jordans. What sort of slap? Can you imagine? Can you imagine the amount of gaslighting that is? You and your family are looking for answers for the things that the government, that the people of the government, that the people in the government, that the people of the nation, supported by the people of the government, have done directly to you. That they acknowledge is bad, that they acknowledge is wrong, that they make stories and movies and books about. To this day.
To this day. To this day.
Yet, you can't get any sort of comeuppance, you can't get any sort of apology that actually means something. You can't get anything. All you can get is these Jordans while you're sitting in a wheelchair. No offense, I'm not saying that people in wheelchairs don't need new shoes, but I'm just saying, if you're in a wheelchair, walking is probably the least of your concerns, and your footwear may be kind of lower on that totem pole, that hierarchy of needs for you. You know what I'm saying? So it's just weird. I'm just saying it's just weird. And with that, trust, we didn't forget Epstein. They're just trying to make us forget him. You know what I'm saying? I mean, in some cases, maybe they're doing a good job. I mean, it's obvious he didn't hang himself, but the story sure did, right? Then you got CIA control over the media and all the narratives and Operation Mockingbird. That's something else you can look up. And then you can see how history is sanitized in real time in all sorts of means, like through AI generated Wikipedia edits, algorithmically buried news, and SEO poison, where they're using false narratives to flood the Google results. So when you're looking up something, it's not even going to be a response that you're naturally looking for. It could be anything. And when it's anything, that means it could be not the thing, right? I mean, for real. In your spare time, whenever you get a chance, try asking ChatGPT to give you a summary of COINTELPRO. And then ask it about Thomas Jefferson's legacy. You can tell me which one sounds like a bedtime story versus which one sounds like, I don't know, something from a summer blockbuster horror flick. And so with that, how do we reclaim the truth in a memory hold world, right? I would say, first of all, define memory holding, where they're removing inconvenient facts from the record, like in something from 1984. Everything's being redacted. Call that stuff out. We have to see that. I mean, we're seeing it nowadays with the Palestine coverage, or Israel, Palestine, however you want to look at it. And no, I will not get into that, but I've got some opinions. But we also see that with regard to what they say about MLK's radical speeches, right? And we see the right people on the right at times when they conjure up the name of MLK, they'll talk about him like he was a conservative, right-wing, gun-toting Jesus nut like they are. He would have been a Christian national just like these people. Not at all. Not nearly, not at all. But because they have more power than the people who know the truth, guess whose narrative gets to go further? I mean, and the same thing with COVID. COVID pops up, all of a sudden the profit motives for all these organizations and pharmaceutical companies that were associated with it, all that's erased. But everything's beneficial. We're just doing this for humanity. Then why is it mandatory? I mean, sure you're doing it for humanity, but you didn't stop the spread. It didn't stop the spread. People who were getting the vaccination were still getting the infection, and then with the infection, they were still passing it on to other people when they said, when you get the vaccination, you're not going to do any of that. So do we just forget that part? I guess we just forget all the stuff that anyway. I don't want to kick up conspiracies, but I think I'm kicking up conspiracies. And I've alluded to this a little bit earlier when we were talking about Fred Hampton, right? The Black Panthers in general were portrayed to this day.
To this day,
They're still portrayed as threats and not protectors. So I remember when I was in college and I was talking to a white guy that I was cool with, and we were just talking about just random things in history, and he was saying the Black Panthers were the most radical, the most radical group of black people who should be abolished in this nation, or some craziness like that. And I'm like, what? Not mind you, his father's a cop, so there's another added level of complexity to this. But he's telling me this, and I'm like, what do you know about the Black Panthers? And he says they killed a cop. I said, did they kill him? Did they really kill a cop, or did a cop end up dead and they blamed it on the Black Panthers? And even with that, so they killed a cop. All these Black Panthers, all these black men with guns, and they killed one cop, and they are the most radical, the most heinous. See what I'm saying? Like and look at how they're being conjured in this guy's mind as he's talking about this, as he's telling me about the Black Panthers. Because apparently I know nothing about the Black Panthers. Coming from Chicago, where Black Panthers had their own, had another hub, and we saw the remnants of the children of the Black Panthers all throughout the city. But yeah, I know nothing. Please, person from Coal Camp, Missouri, tell me about the Black Panthers in your depth and breadth of knowledge. Please inundate me and wow me with your mental and historic acumen. I can't wait. And I say that not because I'm trying to lambaste this guy or to make him look bad, but it's just the fact that you have to challenge you got to challenge people. You got to challenge the message. When the message is coming out and people are saying, "Oh, the Black Panthers are the worst people on the planet," like, wait, so they're worse than the KKK? They're worse than the IRS. They're worse than the Bohemian Grove. They're worse than the Trilateral Commission. They're worse than the IMF. Like, all of these other groups are way bigger, have way more power, way more push, way more heinous in their actions and activities. Yet the Black Panthers are the ones that are the worst. They're the scourge of America. Those are the ones? You sure? See what I'm saying? And even with that, sometimes you got to challenge the audience, because if the truth lives in the footnotes, who's even reading the damn book? Because within that, you're able to break down how mainstream education is funded by political donors. I mean, you've got Henry Ford, Carnegie, and the Rockefellers. Like, those are the three entities that are majorly responsible for the public education that we have received and your children receive today.
to this day.
In that education, in that educationing, has America become more educated on a global scale, would you say, or less educated on a global scale? Because I mean, they have numbers. We have numbers. We have politicians who are using Chat GPT for policy. So I'm just saying. I'm just saying. But yeah, we'll see it today with Zuckerberg and Musk, and their platforms burying unpopular truths. Not necessarily false ones, but just uncomfortable truths. So things about 9/11 that people may not want to hear about that actually took place. Some of that stuff may be buried or hard to find. Stories about COVID and things that took place during the pandemic that are actually true, but maybe unfortunate in an unfortunate series of events. Yeah, some of that may be hard to find or may not come out at all because people who have power have decided, well, they don't need to know so much about that. But if it wasn't for some of the people on these public platforms, then hell, we'd really be up a creek. So yeah, public record nowadays means that some dude on Reddit probably archived it and put it somewhere before it could be disappeared. So Seven, how do we get away from this and get to the truth? Well, my little chickadees, I would say you need to study what's erased. Prioritize what they try to hide. The whistleblowers, the activists, lost communities, all the sealed files, everything that's out there where they're saying that this is a person who's coming out and stepping out and all of a sudden they've disappeared. Look into that story. There have been whistleblowers for Boeing who have been disappeared. There have been, and I've reported on, there have been whistleblowers for other entities that 9/11 that have been disappeared. What is that? Why is that? I mean, it's kind of interesting when somebody is saying, hey, I've got a story to tell, and the other people on the other side are saying that story's a lie. Usually you'd be like, well, let the story come out. If it's a lie, let it be known. But to say, hey, I've got a story to tell, and the other side says that guy's lying, kill him. To me, that is not a way to do public policy. I may be wrong. I may be wrong, but y'all let me know. Maybe I'm just a stickler. But yeah, we got to push past the curriculum for the babies. Don't let the schools, media, or the bots do your thinking for you. Yeah, I can remember a time back in the day when little one came home and was talking about my teacher said X, Y, and Z, and I'm like, that's not right and that's not true. And it took forever because the child didn't see me as an authority, I guess, for whatever reason, or didn't see me as high of an authority as they saw their teacher. All of a sudden, whatever his teacher said was law, and whatever I said was no. So it was like, oh, okay, well, what happens when your teacher is lying to you? Because your teacher gave you straight up and flat out lies. It took a whole day to convince this child that what the teacher said was incorrect. And even with that, I mean, like, it wasn't just like, oh, okay, fine. It was crying. There was crying. There were tears involved. Not mine this time. But there were tears involved. Tears involved in the truth. So just this, that's a microcosm of what takes place on a larger scale. Can you imagine the amount of MAGA people who are now trying to reconcile the fact that their precious, dear un líder has decided to complete Uno reverse when it comes to the Epstein list? When he ran on that to get into office? I can only imagine the amount of contortion that they're trying to do in their minds to say, oh, but he's still the good guy. He's still our leader. He's still... Actually, to be quite honest, it doesn't seem like it's working. And I think that's why MAGA is breaking right now. But I digress once again. But yeah, getting back to it, another way to avoid having to deal with, the lies that liars tell in the place of the truth is to support truth tellers, independent media, investigative reporters, people on YouTube who can talk that ish and back it up. Hell, that weird dude who likes to read court reports and transcripts and bring receipts. Listen to that guy. They usually got a little something going on up there. And repeat the real stories. The system banks on your fatigue. I told you this before, right? When you Google something and you get 80,000 responses to the one thing you're looking up, and in the 80,000 responses, the answer isn't even in there, keep looking for the thing that you're looking for. Do not give in and do not digress. as I have many times. In your search, do not digress. Stay focused on what it is you're looking for, so that way you can get in, get what you want, get out of there without having to deal with the distractions that are landmines along your path, just waiting to pull you off your path and knock you into, oh, look at this, here's some penis pills, look over this, did you hear about this? Look over here, did you hear about this lie that we're trying to purport as truth? I know it can get exhausting. It can get exhausting saying, man, like, who's going to be the watchers of the watchers of the watchers?
Well, who's going to monitor the monitors of the monitors?
Who's going to be the one to do the fact checking on all the stories? Is there any way that we can let our guard down so that way we can just assume that this story is true? And I would say, sure, but it takes a little bit of experience, knowledge, and maybe some years under your belt before you get to that point. And then even when you have that, it's still good to do your research, as the kids say. Do your research. And lastly, I say leave a trail, screenshot, print, share, teach it to somebody who didn't know already. But if nothing else, if you do nothing else, control your own narrative, right? Because if you don't tell your own story, somebody else will do it for you. I guarantee it. And they'll name you as the villain. So look, if history is told by liars, then truth has to be passed on by survivors. Y'all let me know, what is one thing that you know that they lied about in your education, in the media, in the last 3 months, without including Epstein? That's just too easy. But drop that in those comments and share this episode with somebody who is still looking for the list that they promised us. And if you're a part of the 7th Army, hit that subscribe button. Because this is Society Breakdown, and we're not letting liars write the final draft. I've been your boy, Seven Blackman, and I'll see y'all on the next one. Peace! And I'm out.